Hello and welcome to the IDL. My name's Nick, and this is The Worst Draft. This is a podcast that I'm starting where I'm going to be talking about rough drafts on projects that I'm doing. Primarily, these are going to be about game design stuff here on the IDL. Who knows? Maybe other stuff will pop up eventually that I'm working on if it is deemed relevant enough. But mostly I just want to talk about all the different games that I've been working on. And I have been working on a lot of games. I have over a decade of experience of making first draft games and not really getting the opportunity to progress past that. But I'm hoping, wishing, wondering that this podcast will help me walk through some of these spots that I'm stuck at. And just by talking it out loud, and then hopefully maybe we'll finish something. I've got several different games that I'm working on. I think in each episode I may only talk about one, unless it's like little mini updates. But for the most part, what ends up happening with me in these game designs is that like there'll be like a core mechanic or like something like that like my brain gets stuck on, and I cannot move around that little block. So I have to switch to a second project to work on. And if that one gets a block, and I haven't solved the first block by then I move on to a third project. And so I have many things I can talk about on this podcast. Today, I just want to start in with talking about a tabletop RPG that I've been working on for some time. I've had this concept in mind for like a decade, but I haven't really seriously started working on it until like about 4 years ago. And even then, it was only like 2 years ago that I got any real progress on it. And just recently, I revamped an entire core mechanic in the game. I'll talk about that at some point. But just for now, I'll just kind of give a summary of what this thing that I'm working on is. It's a magical realism game. It's very actiony, very I want to say very shonen anime inspired. It's a very action packed. Powers-based game. It's called Realm Breaker. The whole setting of this is that a long time ago there was a king who was able to use magic to split the world into two different realms, and he took all the magic with him into the other realm. That's why we don't have magic in our world. Anything from monsters and myth, that is just these creatures from that magic world, finding breaks in the realm, breaks in the veil to cross realms, basically. That's why it's called Realm Breaker. It's about these magical things coming through, breaking through realms to our area. Where the action comes in, how are people dealing with it. The magic system I have is based on when these monsters are defeated, they produce a small talisman, and that talisman is what unlocks specific magical traits. So like you might have a dragon who dies, turns into a talisman. That talisman says fire on, right? So then now someone can use that talisman to do fire magic. Also very Jackie Chan Adventures inspired, I'd say. Very heavily relied on that. I loved that concept, I guess. So that's where I like the modularness of that stuff, of that kind of genre. Like I really liked, was it Shaolin Showdown? Not as similar, but or maybe not as on the nose. But also I'd like that modular, like fighting over magic items and having the different combos that you get out of them. However, a lot of this is very based in player imagination. I want to reward creativity, so I have like a list of traits that people are allowed to build their own powers based off that. So like someone who has that fire talisman might be able to use, like, one player might not be very creative and goes, I can breathe fire now because I got it from a dragon. And they figure out all the traits that let them do that combo of mechanics. A more creative person might be like, hey, I'm going to set up all these different traits to instead let me rocket through the air using fire from my feet or something like that. That's basically the concept of this game. On Earth, there is this takes place, I mean, for me, where I'm writing this is in North America. I think it obviously could and should take place globally for people, but I'm just focusing on a little bit of the scope being in America because that's where I'm from. I don't really know enough about other. I wouldn't feel comfortable writing settings for different areas of the world, is what I'll say, because like, I feel like I could do enough research on it, but I don't think I'll get it right or make it make sense to those cultures. So I just don't want to do that, right? I would love if someone else made settings for that, but that would require this game being, a game people like to play. But I digress. So in this, on the Earth side, our version of the realm, instead there is the government, obviously, has their hands in things, and they have what is called the American Defense of Magic, also known as ATOM. Program ATOM has, all these agents who are up and up on the idea that there's magic, and they're kind of going to find magic hotspots and kind of nullify that area. Very Digimon Tamers inspired. I'm getting a lot of sources from a lot of different cartoons and anime because that is what I love and what I'm trying to recreate. So I don't think a lot of systems are great. I don't even think my system is perfect. That's why this is just a rough draft and I haven't gotten anywhere, I think. But we'll see where we can get done with this. So the agents of ATOM, they all go by 8, like, to keep a little bit more anonymous, they all go by Agent ATOM. When they're introducing their credentials, they all say Agent ATOM. So that's like this like kind of like a John Doe type name for all these different agents to help them kind of secure their presence and whatnot. But yeah, they go into these hotspots that magic are at. They go in, they try to neutralize it. They're not necessarily the good guys. I have different ways you can play the game built into here, where you could be agents of ATOM. You could be people who just want to use magic and roam free. And I've got that set up so, ATOM agents might be your enemy because they want to neutralize the magic that you've got going on. Primarily, the things that come from across the veil are magic beasts. I very heavily I very heavily truncate it to just M beast in the text because typing out magic beast every single time was a hellish nightmare. So I just said screw that. So I truncated some of these things. But magic beasts are primarily the things that you fight from the other side of the veil. Occasionally you might get invaders who are, I refer to anyone who's using magic in this system as magic knights. So any M Knight who is coming from the other side, I usually refer to them as invaders. They're usually there on behest of that now immortal king who wants to reclaim both sides of the realms and just fuse it back into one and have full control over everything. So sometimes invaders will come in, but it's less common because I think I want to focus more on the story of people in this world. Not that you wouldn't be able to, obviously. I think that, you wouldn't put it in the system or in the setting if I didn't think it was worth exploring. But yeah, so there's that. That's basically the setting. Oh, another major threat you'd be fighting is other who I refer to as renegades in this game, is any M Knight who isn't part of Adam and isn't part of the invaders and just kind of is doing their own thing. Those are I refer to as renegades. You might fight a lot of other renegades who, turf wars, or they want to hunt beasts, or they want to take your magic, stuff like that. So the core mechanic I use in this system for determining everything is a pool of D10s. I'm basically doing, I have 9 stats called embodiments. They're very just about you physically, like things that describe you, like your fitness, your focus, your luck, things like that. And I'll get to those. But I have these embodiments as like a main set of 9 stats, and then a set of 8 stats called approaches, which is how you would go about doing everything you want to do. So that might be striking, that might be moving, that might be socializing, that might be learning. And what I do for this core mechanic is you take a number of dice equal to your skill in the approach you're using, and a number of dice equal to your score in your embodiment, like an appropriate embodiment. So, for instance, if you're if you're walking on a balance beam, you might use your dice pool from move and your dice pool from coordination, and so you add those up, you roll, and you anything that is an 8 or a higher on the dice, that is a success. And you use successes to activate effects, whether that is helping you get past a target number, a difficulty check. Like say you need 3 successes to get over this balance beam. You roll that pool. If you get 3 8 or higher, then you get a success on that. Otherwise, you can use it on effects. So, for instance, if you have magic that lets you hurt people, you might be able to... You have a magic that lets you hurt people, but it also helps you snare someone so they can't move. So then what happens is you roll your dice, you can take the number of successes you get, and you can kind of divvy out what effect you want to happen. Like, okay, I'm here to... I've got like razor wire magic, and so like I'm binding this person. They don't defend very well, so I get 3 successes, and so I use 2 of my successes to snare them for longer, or snare them so it's harder to get out, and then 1 to hurt them, right? So you could do, I do 2 to hurt them and 1 to snare them. I only want to hurt them, so I just hurt them, or I only want to snare them, I just snare them. So like there's effects you can use using those successes. You're not going to have a million different magic powers, so I'm hoping, my idea is that you will be able to dig in. You'll have an idea of what kind of how your pool works for each ability and how you use them. And so hopefully I'm thinking like this list of traits, and that success spending doesn't really overwhelm or slow down in certain ways. That's the base mechanic, is using this dice pool to get those successes. If you get 3 7s on the dice, that's a critical success. If you roll 3 6s on the dice, that's a fumble. And those will have effects that I can talk about at some point later. I guess the main one is that crits will double your successes, and fumbles will half the number of successes you have. There's other abilities to it, but I'll wait until I actually talk about those. What I want to talk about is I just want to go through... I'm going through like base character sheet stuff right now in this episode. I might dig in deeper, heavier on different topics as we go, depending on how long things take and what we're expecting out of this. But yeah, so your main things on the character sheet. Actually, hold on. I've recently made a character sheet. I haven't made it form fillable online yet, but I do have a actual character sheet written, like a test one written up. So I'm gonna go through character sheet. I want to kind of look at the different ways you build characters here. And I want to just kind of go through that for now on this episode, and maybe we'll dig in deeper later at another time. But for now, your base stuff in the character sheet. When the embodiments that I mentioned, you have 3 categories of embodiments that I refer to as the 3 M's, is might, mind, and magnetism. Under the might category, you have your embodiments are fitness, build, and coordination. Fitness would be like how athletic you are. Your build is kind of based on your size and your, I don't want to say like your constitution, but it's very much, how durable you are. So as I would say, how big you are, how durable you are. You have coordination, which is how precise you are. Under the mind category, you have focus, which is how studious you are. You have wit, which is how quick or adaptive you are. Emotion, how mature you are. Under magnetism, you have spirit, which is how magical you are. Luck, how fortunate you are. And influence, which is how commanding you are. When you have scores in these different categories, so like if fitness, build, and coordination, if you had 1 in each of those, not only do you get 1 to your dice pool for those different roles, your might has a score of 1 plus your total number from that category. So if you, if you had 1 in each fitness, build, and coordination, you would have 4 might. And what does might do for you? Number 1, it's how much physical damage you can take. So if someone hits you with, that razor wire, and they hit you for 3, you have 1 more hit you can take before you get what's called a scar. And a scar is, just like a descriptive term for how damaged you are. So like they might be like a cut up leg. So if they got you, if you had 4 might and they did 4 damage to you, that next damage with the razor wire might be like, your leg is all cut up. So you get the scar, and what that does is you're basically now re-rolling. Your opponent will be able to make you re-roll your dice based on that thing. So like if you're trying to run away and you have a cut up leg, you might have to re-roll one of your highest dice to get a worse score. And that's kind of a lot of the different system has ways for you to re-roll and or what I call boosting. Boosting is when you're allowed to raise the dice up 1 at a time to get up those better results, which I can explain it eventually. But yeah, so for instance, like you have that 4 might, you get that scar. How many scars can you take? So might tells you how much physical damage you can take before getting scars. Mind gives you how much mental damage you can take before getting scars. And magnetism is how many scars you can have before becoming incapacitated. And I'm not putting death as the only option in these, because again, your scars might come from like mental damage. So incapacitation, it's basically up to whatever your the person who put you in that position, what they want. They might leave you for dead. They might take you out of the game for a while, as you can't like recuperate. You might die. It's going to be up to whoever is doing it. So I think people have different goals on what they want out of combat. And I think assuming death in these scenarios is probably counteractive to how I want some of these stories to be told. Also, for instance, if I'm rolling fitness plus move, I can only get a number of successes as high as my might score. So if I have a might of 4 and I do move plus fitness, I can only ever get a max of 4 successes. So like you would roll, if there was a opponent, if you're doing like a fitness plus strike to hurt someone, your opponent, after they defend, you had 7 successes. The defense puts you down to 5. However, you will only ever get to do that 4 successes, basically. I don't know how I feel about this mechanic yet. This is how I have it right now. I thought it was a good idea for, impossible tasks. So if something is above your pay grade, like hacking into a computer that's got a, like, I don't have it so you can automatically succeed on some of these things just by lucking out. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it yet. It's a good way for, oh, you have a might of 4? Sorry, but the target number's a 5. So you wouldn't ever be able to, right? It might change. It might go away. It might disappear. It would be preferable if I could find out how restrictive it really is to play. But, who knows? So that's those scores. Oh, your magnetism also lets you know how much you can boost a single dot or boost a single check. So for instance, and this also might go away, I don't know. For instance, if you have 3 dice and one of them is a 5 and the other 2 is an 8 and a 9, and you want that 3rd success, you would have to boost your die by 3. And boosting is, we use a system called resolve. You can spend that resolve. 1 resolve equals 1 boost. So you spend 3 resolve, you boost 3 to 8. If you have a magnetism of 2, for instance, you might not be able to boost it past 7, and so you wouldn't get that 3rd success. I don't know how I feel about that yet. That's something I wrote in as maybe a limiter. And I'll explain a little bit more once I get to resolve and why I put that limiter in there. But again, it's not something I'm particularly needing in my game. We'll find out. Next, we have approaches. That's the thing you roll with your embodiments to figure out your results, your dice pool. And you might be wondering, hey, what if I get a lot of dice pool? Now I'm rolling like 10d10. And honestly, that's kind of the charm for it for me. I like that idea of you. I also used to do wargaming, and you have bigger dice pools that you roll for that. And that's why I did like the success base is kind of off that wargaming idea. So like if you don't have to add up anything, you're just spotting out the successes in the pool, which goes a little bit faster than adding up some individual dice, I think. But I wanted that higher like dice pool capability to make you feel powerful. So for instance, in like D&D or Pathfinder, if you're rolling Fireball, everyone loves the thrill of that giant pool of dice for Fireball. It makes you feel powerful. And that's kind of what I'm wanting to simulate with this is that, your numbers might not be big, but your dice pool is. And I think that can help with a little bit of that kind of like power fantasy idea in here. So the different approaches you have. The first one is learn, which is remembering or gaining information. Move, which is moving through spaces. Strike, which is hitting or attacking something. Defend, which is dodging or blocking something. Socialize, which is like charming, lying, taunting, arguing, inspiring. All of those things kind of fit into one. Help, which is aiding someone in a task or healing someone. Resources, which would be gaining, buying, owning, knowing contacts. Just all of the kind of resource stuff built into one. I'm not having people buy things in a traditional sense where you need to count how many dollars you have. I'm using resources as that be all. Like some things will have ranks, and you can do resource checks every once in a while to see if you can buy something or to see if you already had something. The last approach is interact, which is a lot of the different general things of like using computers, using technology, driving, controlling or manipulating things, stealing, it's kind of like a wide net of stuff. But that's where, your different embodiments come in, right? So you might not, if you're stealing something, you interact coordination, for instance. But if you're using a computer, you might use focus interact. So, they are kind of split up in that sense where you can use different embodiments to get different types of roles based off these approaches. I think between the 9 and the 8, you can get a pretty decent coverage of using the different skills. When you use magic, so I call them arts, because it's not necessarily just magic. So there's 2 types of arts. There's magic arts, which is the talisman trait building that I mentioned, and then style arts, which is like techniques that you might use that aren't magical that you can still build using those traits. So that whether it's martial arts or a style of deductive reasoning, maybe someone's style is divining rods, and using those. So things like that. So I'm hoping that gives you kind of a wide net of how to be creative with the system and the traits. Oh, so resolve. That was the other. I want to start with resolve now, just so I can talk about it in relation to your dice rolls. Resolve is something you get through various things. You can get it through starting a new scene. A lot of this game is broken down into scenes, whether that's downtime, a skirmish, a social encounter, exploration. I break the game down into scenes to be a little bit more controlled on how to navigate, so people aren't necessarily stuck on second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour gameplay. So scenes can be kind of like, okay, they take enough time as they need to take, and then you can move on to a new scene, which might take, one of them might go second by second, the other one might go hour by hour, stuff like that. But the idea is those different scenes breakdown can help control pacing a little bit. So you starting new scenes, you get resolve. During downtime, you get extra resolve. Getting critical successes gives you resolve. You get a critical success, you gain as many resolve as your successes. So if you got that 777, all those 7s become successes, and then you double your successes. So if you had an 8, a 9, and 3 7s, that's 5 successes. That's 2 successes turned to 5 successes, turned to 10 successes. You get 10 resolve. And then doing certain victory conditions, or defeating enemies, or solving your own personal drives, completing different things throughout the game will give you resolve. And resolve is how you advance in this game. So think about it as both XP and like it's like the big meta currency, I guess. So it's like XP, where you can increase your approaches, you can increase your embodiments, you can buy new magic powers, and you can boost your dice results. So it's kind of this trade-off of like, what's more important, surviving right now, or building up that dice, or building up that pool of resolve to get better skills. So I like that trade-off idea rather than a linear level system. I just wanted to see how this plays out, because I really like the idea of that trade-off. So again, when you're doing the approach of the resolve, that's why it's like, if you get a critical success, you double your resolve, which gives you a bunch of resolve. When you fumble, you half your successes and you lose 3 resolve. You can both crit and fumble on a same roll, and that's fine. You can't boost. Anything that's a 6 on the die, you can't boost. So if you risk fumbling, that's going to stay there. You can't boost out of that. However, you can bypass. So if you have a 5 on the dice, you would need to spend 2 to bring that up to a 7. Though you probably would never want to just spend that 1 anyway to bring it to a 6, because then it's not a success as a 6. So, it also helps, so you have to spend a little bit more to get where you're going. other things you're going to choose as a character. So there's things called experiences. So when you make your character, you'll get 3 different experiences. These are descriptive things, and they're ranked from 1 to 3. Basically, as an example, so say you have a rank 2 experience called archaeology, meaning that when you make any rolls involving archaeology, you're allowed to reroll 2 dice. So, there's a lot of ways to reroll dice, and then if you still don't get successes, that's usually when you would boost to try and force those successes. That way people have avenues to be successful and not stall out if they really want it. I want to put that kind of like forcing a success into the player's hands. So you would reroll 2 dice. So if you have you might have an experience being a professional baker. And these aren't all just occupations. You might just have a chess master, something like just whatever kind of experience involving your what you're doing, what you have going on for yourself. So those would give you different things. So if you had a professional baker 1, it means that relates on checks related to baking or even running a business, you would reroll 1 dice. I want it a little bit abstract, people to interpret what their background or what their experiences mean. I'll get to it later, but one of your experiences does have to involve your background, which your background, I'll get to a little bit later. It helps you build up your stats, basically, and gives you a specific power. But before I get to that, I want to go over bonds and spots. So bonds and spots. Spots are basically experiences that your enemies can use against you. So your experiences, only you get to choose to roll for based off that. Spots, like scars, can be used against you. So there's 2 different types of spots. There are tough spots, which are things that are making your life more difficult. They could be like flaws, they could be bad relationships, or they could be obligations you have. Soft spots are things that your characters are more agreeable to or more fond of, such as your bonds, favorite foods, hobbies, things like that. But they are all things that can be used against you. Bonds specifically are a type of soft spot that you get a number of bonds starting out equal to your magnetism score with a max of 5 bonds. Each bond has a score of 0 to 5 and starts at a score equal to your influence with a minimum of 1. Bonds, you can lower your score at any time to gain 3 resolve. So if you have 0 resolve right now and you need to succeed on something, you can reduce your score of your bond to give you resolve. And that's kind of like you taking in all of the stress and projecting that onto them. If a bond reaches 0, instead of erasing that bond, you cross it out and it's now a tough spot instead of a soft spot. So it becomes a problem in your life that you have to, this manifests as your spouse might divorce you, feeling repulsed by a food you used to love, a city no longer feels like home, things like that. I don't know necessarily how I feel at the moment about bonds starting out as a soft spot, like something we used against you, but it makes sense that we used against you. I just don't know yet how I feel about it. Other spots don't have scores though. That's kind of the big thing. If you have a bond that is destroyed or killed, you immediately strike it out, add it as a tough spot, and then gain resolve equal to the number of the bond score times 5. So if your bond is your sister and you have a bond of 3, that's a pretty middle road bond that you have with her. And if she were to, die in a car accident and you find out, you now gain a ton of resolve for your bond being lost. There's ways to get new bonds. They're not necessarily you only have that 5 and once they're all gone, they're gone. But you can get new bonds if you have something bad happen. So basically, you and your opponents can make learn checks during a scene to learn someone's tough spot, or try to build rapport with them to learn a soft spot, and now that's how you get to use those against them. Scars can be used no matter what. You have to learn the tough spot and the soft spot to be able to use them against someone. Backgrounds. Backgrounds are things that are like, are you a scholar? Were you a soldier? Are you wealthy? Things like that. Just kind of like descriptive parts of your background. There's 9 backgrounds that I have in the book. Each background gives you the ability to increase your stats. So an athlete, for instance, will increase your fitness 1 and your build 1, and then will give you, for your approaches, will boost one of your boost your interact, and you get a free boost, which means you're. I need to change the language there. I use boost for both increasing a dice roll and increasing your stats. So I need to find a better word for that. So I stopped making that because I was using them interchangeably when I started this. I need to change that, but. You increase those stats, because you have, and then you get what's called an edge. Edges are just like powers not related to magic. So, for instance, the athlete gets the edge, go the distance. Once per session, you can move an extra zone when making a move action. When you look at when we're dealing with maps, everything is considered a zone. You break it down into individual zones, and those zones are how you move. Everyone can move up to one zone. Standard, so it's not like 5 feet grids or anything like that, or you can move 5 inches in any direction on the map. It's all about breaking everything down to zones, and you can move between zones. And some zones are bigger, some zones are smaller. So it just depends on what your encounter needs, basically. Yeah. So after you choose a background, which helps you, and then you choose an archetype. An archetype gives you a little bit more focus on what kind of things you can do. So, for instance, I might choose, because I have the athlete background, I might choose the acrobat archetype. The acrobat archetype will give you several increases to both your embodiments and your approaches. A lot more. So, like, for instance, the athlete gave you 2 increases to your embodiments and 2 increases to your approaches. Acrobat gives you 6 increases to your embodiments and 4 increases to your approaches. So overall, you should be starting with 8 points to spend on your embodiments and 6 points to spend on your approaches. Other things you get from this is an affinity. So, for instance, the acrobat gets affinity water. What that means is the different traits for powers are broken into different subgroups based off different elements. So if you have affinity water, buying traits from the water subgroup costs half as much resolve. So it kind of helps you figure out what kind of traits you're better at getting and how you might focus your character based off. So like if you have like specific traits you're looking for in general that you'd like to do, then you might choose an archetype that best suits those abilities. You also get edges from being an acrobat. However, it's not just a free edge. It's something you have to purchase with your skills. You do get one free. It's a rank 0 edge. So acrobat, for instance, is gain +1 dice on checks to avoid damage while moving. So if you're doing a move action of some sort, or a move approach, and there's something that would cause you damage in that time, you can roll +1 defense, or 1+ dice to defend against that damage. And then there's rank 1, 2, and 3 of other edges. There's 6 other edges that you can get from this archetype. And you'll basically be able to buy them as you go. And you don't even have to stick with just one archetype. You can purchase other archetypes. So you might be acrobat and be like, okay, that's not enough for me. I think I also want to be a tactician. So that you'll be able to buy the ability to have the tactician archetype, which then you'll get to, get more edges you can get. Organizations. So every group will have an organization, and those organizations kind of give you a thematic bonus for all players. And they have their own edges that you can buy that apply to everyone. So for instance, one of them might have an edge called enhance approach. That just means you get +1 dice to that approach or embodiment whenever you need to use that. The different organizations, I just call them orgs for short, that I have listed here are an Atom Cell, so you can play as agents of Atom. You can play Magic Beast Hunters, players who are focused on hunting down magic beasts and doing like these kaiju battles. Protectors, people who aren't involved with Atom, but they want to stop the invasion, or they want to like protect their little hometown from corrupt forces. Like say a gang is getting magic and they're taking over the town, and you want to stop that. You might do a Protector. And then I have a Rogues Gallery, which is just meant for general renegade activity. So your players who are more focused on having the freedom to move and do as they please, that kind of, and want to use the talismans to fuel that dream. Every organization gives you the ability to have a major drive and a minor drive. So the major drive that you have is something that is a long-term goal for your group. So I'll just take the Atom Cell, for example. Major drive for Atom would be to eliminate magic. You might be there to seal the veil in a particular neighborhood. That might be your long-term goal. Or it might be to take down a specific gang who's using magic, or a rogues gallery who are using magic in this area very destructively, and you want to take that down, or you're just reducing magic in some way. So like you'll have a major drive that'll be very focused on like something like that, and then once that goal is made, you get resolve and you get edges from your organization, things like that. Then you have minor drives, which are smaller arcs that are more immediate. So for instance, if you're trying to take down, if you're trying to like keep a city safe from a bunch of renegades or something like that, every minor drive might be like, there's a list of 7 renegades or 7 gang leaders who are all vying for turf, and your minor drives might be like each individual. Your major drive might be like taking down everything. The minor drive might be each individual person you need to take down, things like that. And then, of course, players will have personal drives. So personal drives are what helps your knight helps them move through the story and helps them get different, extra resolve throughout things to grow. And so those will be, very personal based off of what you have, like paying off Bond's medical debt, or, you might want to win the Battle of the Bands, something like that. So these are just like what help you drive you in the story. That will also help you eventually improve mechanically. That's like the basics of the characters in this game. We're getting near an hour. I don't know if I'll go a full hour or something like that. But yeah, that's the breakdown of what I have for characters in this game right now, and like a little bit of setting, a little bit of the characters, some of the more core mechanics. I have a bit more to go on like the actual just the game. There's I think next time I might talk about what I have for scenes and what I have for building your powers, your magic, your arts, your styles, and like other mini things like conditions. Talk about zones a bit more. Talk about mission building. Again, I like the idea of keep this more structured. It helps it be kind of helps it to be episodic if you want it to be. Because I do like downtime in systems. So I do have your default scene is a downtime scene in which there might be your GM might be like, hey, you guys have 3 weeks worth of downtime before something happens. So go ahead and do what you're going to do with your downtime here, and then we can move back. Like I'll get to it next time. There's a lot of different things you can do with downtime, but it's there to help you improve or do things to prep yourself. Because I like the passage of time, as opposed to everything I don't mind stories where things all happen in a week. That doesn't bother me either. I want that to be in the control of players, to like encourage them to be like, hey, you can choose to make this a longer game with downtime. Nothing has to be like, sometimes something feels like an immediate threat and it doesn't necessarily work out that way in life, where there's nothing you can do and you do have to wait on news, you have to wait on time, you have to wait on someone else doing something. And so, I like that episodic nature to it, and I wanted that downtime to reflect that. We'll get into it more on the next time. So that is, small introduction, I guess, a long introduction, I guess, to Realmbreaker, the RPG I've been working on. One of 3 I've worked on in the last few years. I have those you can look forward to. 2 other RPGs you can look forward to. I have other ones in the that are more like brainstorm period, but like no real mechanic has stuck out to me for them. I've working on a trading card game, and kind of wanted to work on a second card game. I've had other card games in the past that I might talk about that I saw the rough prototypes of. That'll be it for the worst draft. Thank you for hanging out and listening to my project. If you like this, I'll obviously go in, give me some reviews, share it with your friends. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at various places. Check out the website, bumblescum.com. That'll give you, that can direct you to different social medias and also the different episodes that I have on the IDL for different things. I have everything indexed on there. So if you get frustrated with how Acast works, or you don't have like a great podcatcher, or you're like looking for something specific and you don't want to dig through it on the feed, you can always go to the website. Bumblescum.com/IDL, I think, is more direct, and that'll take you to the landing page where you can find that campaign index. Or I might switch that from campaign index to show index. Whatever. You'll find something there. You can always check out like specific episodes, specific things from there. I think that's it. So bye.